All right, here we go with part two. So here's my disclaimer about part two before we begin. You should note, and this is from our previous studies, that there are literally an infinite number of combinations that will take triangle ABC to triangle A prime, B prime, C prime. So certainly whichever one I show you is simply an example. And what you really should take out of this is what I have to diagram and what I have to note at each step that takes me from one to the other. Okay, so that's what I need you kind of in your head um, about these transformations is really how do I diagram it, because you can always find a pathway that gets you there. Um, so there you have it. Okay, so I need to take ABC to A prime, B prime, C prime. So we have to kind of decide how to do that. And for me, my strategy has always been to move or think about a single point. Get it close and then adjust it as I need to. So here's kind of what I mean. So I'm going to rough it out first, just really quickly. Not green. Terrible choice, Mr. Collins. Have a deep green. And we'll, it's actually about right here. Okay, so I have this triangle ABC, and I need to move to A prime, B prime, C prime. So here's the first thing I actually want to do. I want to take this guy and I want to translate it so the two triangles are touching at a point that actually needs to be mapped. So what I mean is this. I'm going to take this and I'm going to translate it down to here uh, until C is actually lying on top of C prime. And the reason I want to do that is because I notice that these are going to have to be rotated at some point, maybe even reflected. So moving it down so C touches C prime is going to be a good thing for me, simply because it's going to make my points of rotation easier to pick out. Okay, so that's going to be my first move. Okay. The second thing I need to do, I think now is here, is I need to rotate it so I have lines that are matching. So I move this so I match the point. I'm going to rotate it this way until those lines are matching. So if you see that, look at it again. I know it's kind of crazy because I'm doing this by hand. The point of rotation should be fairly obvious. The point of rotation is going to be C prime itself. And the reason why that's brilliant is because picking it by a point of picking it as a point of rotation means it's not moving. So I'm not trying to track too many points anymore. Okay. So that's going to be move number two. I'm going to perform a rotation. Okay. And the third move, I think, is pretty obvious. I'm going to reflect, and I'll reflect upon this line right here, this A prime, C prime line. So it seems like I can probably accomplish this in three steps if I'm careful. The first one was a translation down, then it was a rotation, and then it was going to be a reflection. Okay, so let's go ahead and make that happen a little bit more formally, um, so we can actually track this down, okay? So the first move, and I'm gonna try to do this a little more formally. I'll do this in blue. Let's make that a little thicker. I feel like an artist all of a sudden. So one way I'm gonna track this is by to actually creating a progressive diagram. In other words, showing all my steps. So my first step was to take this guy and translate it down to this position. Okay. So to what I have to show to convince myself that this is true is, since it is a translation, I have to show the vector. So I'm going to show the vector in a dotted line. Wow, look at that straight line. Okay, so there's my vector. And then I'm going to rename this triangle. I can't use A, B, C. I can't use A prime, B prime, C prime. So I'm just going to just continue, let's say D, E, and then I'll leave C prime as it is. So I need to note what happened. And so I'll write it right here. So step one was to translate along the vector C, C prime. And that's just another way to call a vector. Triangle ABC until it lands on triangle D, E, C prime. Okay? So that was move number one. So if you recall the second move, oh, how do I paste? Good lord. Okay, well, whatever. So the second move was to take this triangle and rotate it up. Right? So the rotation, let's see, let's go pink. Right? So this triangle is now going to get rotated up so until DC lies on A prime C prime. Uh-oh, Mizzou game started. All right. I don't know what's going to happen here. Am I going to move them both? Okay. So this triangle is going to move and rotate this away. Okay. let me change that to pink so it matches. Okay, so again, we have to pick some new letters here. A prime and C prime are fine. I'm going to call this point F. Right? So the way I'm going to note this is by making sure that my angle of rotation is clear, and the lengths are going to take care of itself. So in this case, step 2 was that I'm going to rotate. I'll use a big R with my center of rotation as C prime, my angle of rotation being D C prime A prime, because I did rotate until this line lies on top of this line, which is how I'm picking out that angle. Triangle D E C prime until it lies on top of triangle A prime F C prime. Okay, one last thing left to do, and that is to reflect. Now, I'm not going to try to bother to kind of show you the reflection. I'm just going to go ahead and draw on top of it, and I'll use orange to do so. But this is going to be my line of reflection, and my triangle will now lie here. Okay? And I don't need to rename it because it's going to be named. It's going to be actually the triangle's final position. So step 3, which actually end up being up here, is going to be reflection over line A prime C prime of triangle AF C prime until it lies on top of triangle A prime B prime C prime, which is my goal. So it was a 3 move. I translated down. Blue translates down. Pink rotates over, and orange reflects over A prime C prime, which is actually one of the lines of my triangle. So again, what's important to note here is not so much the sequence I use, but the thinking behind my sequence and the things I have to use, like as far as calling the rules and making the sketch. The important thing to note about this period is that there's a series of moves that takes one onto the other, and the important information you have to show for each one. Translations, you got to show the vector. Rotations, you have to name the center and the angle. And then reflections, you have to name the line of reflection. Okay, so that does it for this part of the video. I'm going to go ahead and in my key record the other two. I'm not going to make a video over these two simply because it'll become awfully repetitive and just make for a really long video, but you'll have the key for reference if you want to look at the problems. All right, so that's part 2. I'll see you guys in part 3.